Hey there, I'm Thea Dudley, also known as the Credit Overlord, and welcome to LBM Talks Credit. We are the only podcast that talks trade credit in the lumber and building material space. Never miss an episode, stay tuned, and we're glad you're here. Hey there, LBM community. Welcome to another edition of LBM Talks Credit. I'm Thea Dudley, your host, also known as the Credit Overlord. And today we are diving into probably one of my best and worst subjects. It is the degrading of the decision-making process. So I have a really cool friend who has I don't even know what you got your master's degree in, but I know it's impressive as hell. So for those of you that don't know Tina Breen, Tina, tell them what that degree is in.
Thanks, Thea. And thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I'm really excited to collaborate with you. So I did just recently get my master's in industrial and organizational psychology. And a lot of people say, well, what the heck is that? Are you analyzing me? Are you a psychologist? Are you a clinician? Are you, trying to be in my head every time we're talking?
Yes, you are, because sitting with you is intimidating.
Oh, don't be intimidated at all. I am not in your head. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a clinician. I'm not licensed. So industrial and organizational psychology is using psychology principles in the workplace. So psychology at its core is understanding why people do what they do, and then harnessing that to build better organizations.
Okay, so the dumbed down version for some of us is you look at the decision-making process a little bit different than us. So let me take a step back for a minute. Tina also happens to be the vice president of sales and marketing for MRS, Manufacturer Reserve Supply. Mm-hmm. So wanted to at least, though, yes, you do have an actual job outside of psychoanalyzing everyone you hang out with. But the decision-making process, is such a big deal, and it tends to degrade over time. Now, I know that you're an analytical person, so I pulled some statistics.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to come unprepared and have you go, you're basing this on what? Well, my gut feel and experience from how my days go. So I came up with this particular study that was done online. It was free internet chess users, and researchers took a look at 184 people. And a couple of things grabbed my attention. And I'd really like you to weigh in on this.
Okay.
Most accurate decision-making happens between 8 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon, regardless if you're a morning person or not, which I find hard to believe because some people, when you yell good morning at them, do not respond in kind. So there's that.
Like me, I need my coffee in the morning before I can be nice.
Before someone can get you.
Yes.
Morning decisions were most accurate, but took longer. So it took us longer to figure out that we were going to do something, but they were
More
better.
accurate.
As the day goes on, decisions came faster, but were less accurate. I think of that as I have all my junk in my hand to go home, and you're coming at me with something. It's like, just ship it. I'll deal with it tomorrow, and it's always a bad idea.
Right.
And then finally, in a study of judges, decisions were 65% more favorable right after lunch, but almost 100% unfavorable right before lunch. So food is a factor.
Yes.
So morning, give me a snack. So does that mean that when you're coming at me in the afternoon, do you need to throw chocolate at me from a safe distance to see if you're going to get a better response?
In short, yes. And so let me unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
There was a lot going on there. So decision-making fatigue is a real thing, and it's cognitive fatigue. So it's your brain's ability to make decisions. And if you think about it, your brain is a muscle. And when you use that muscle over and over, it gets tired and it needs a minute to recharge. So your cognitive decision-making abilities do decrease as you feel fatigued. Also can be emotionally based, which can be driven from hunger. So if you're hunger and you're feeling cranky and you're feeling frustrated, usually that's not actually frustration, it's fatigue setting in or hunger setting in. So decisions that are made right before lunch probably will be unfavorable. And I did check your statistics because you gave them to me beforehand. And that does correlate with a lot of the psychology books that I've read, that right before lunch people are are emotional because they're hungry. So they're making emotionally based decisions, not fact-based decisions. And then as the day goes on, you're tired. Your brain is tired. Your memory is going to revert to familiar patterns because that's what's easiest. So like your example you just said, at the end of the day, you're like, oh, just go ahead and ship it, do whatever you want. That was easy because your brain doesn't have the power right now to really think through that strategically. So you revert to memory-based decisions, which is just ship it, I'll deal with it tomorrow.
Well, I know if I ask a lot of the salesmen out there, they're like, okay, well, that explains why at the end of the day, my credit manager's going, yeah, no, nothing's happening. Get out.
Yeah.
Just get out. How much of that decision making really impacts the day-to-day business when you've got credit and sales coming at it? So I feel like we've just taught all of the salesmen out there, look, go for the easy win. If you know that you can get a quick yes, go at 4:59 with your big order. It's like, that's not a good way to go.
Yeah, that's not a good way to go. And I hope that's not what we're teaching the salespeople, because ultimately that's not what's going to be best for the company. There are big financial impacts to decisions that credit managers or anyone in accounting that's customer facing makes. And you want those decisions ultimately to be what's best for the business. So if I was a salesperson, it might be a short-term gain, but a long-term loss. So I think what we learn is that it's better to make these decisions earlier in the morning, like your statistics have proven from the chess example and the judges.
Well, I know just looking at stuff, I see credit managers a lot of times that they'll wait. A decision will come up and they're like, oh, not this guy again. And then they keep putting it off and they put it off and they put it off. And then you get to the end of the day and they're getting ready to pack up and they go ahead and release the order anyway. Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, if you were going to release it anyway, why didn't you release it at 9:00 in the morning? Why did you wait till 4:30 in the afternoon?
Yeah.
So was that just kicking the can down the road? Was that just you being lazy? And then and then you get to the end of the day, it's decision fatigue. You're like, I just can't fight this.
Yeah. I would say somewhere in there, their personality traits are coming into play. Maybe that's not something that's a cognitive fatigue. I mean, because they didn't make the decision, it turned into cognitive fatigue. Okay. But if they don't have specific decision-making abilities in their personality traits, or they've not been trained properly how to handle their workflow, I could see where that might happen. So if you have someone who doesn't have a high level of self-structure, they don't know how to organize their day or prioritize their day or manage their time, that's where they're more likely to put things off. And I feel like that is part of the personality.
I'd have to agree with that. I think when you look at certain people when they're making decisions, they're okay going, yep, no, I'll change my opinion if you bring me fresh information. Yeah. But until then, this is what we have. So my question for you is, what can we do knowing that this is a real thing? What can credit managers do to kind of level that out, knowing that they have these decisions coming all day? Would it be a restructuring of the day to approve things? And knowing that things are going to come through, some orders are going to happen, but how would you coach credit managers to deal with that fatigue?
Well, first, self-awareness is the first step. So they have to recognize and understand that fatigue, decision-making fatigue, is a real thing. And does it impact them? Because it might not impact everybody, but the ones that it does impact, they have to realize, okay, this is something about me that I need to understand. I get tired more towards the end of the day, and I know my decisions are slower and maybe not as good. So what can I do to kind of course correct or restructure my day? Which is exactly where you were going with that. I would recommend, once they get to the point where they're like, okay, I know this is something I need to work through, mindfulness, which I know is a huge buzzword everywhere, but it is a great way to start when you're protecting your mental health. So figuring out mindful and intentional ways to restructure your day would be a good start. And I think what a lot of executives are doing now is time blocking in their schedules.
I love that.
So I just started doing it. I don't do it all the time, but I do it when I'm feeling stressed out.
Okay.
And that's what helps me to feel less stressed out is when I've time blocked. And I time block in the morning projects or decisions or actionable items that I need to work on that have the most impact on the company. That's what I do first. And then I plan in little breaks for myself because you need to recharge your batteries during the day. So a 10-minute break. You just get up, you get a cup of coffee, you go for a walk, you stretch your legs, go out to your car, grab something, just being outside helps to recharge too. Okay. There are also studies where nature helps you to rebalance and recharge your batteries. And some of these things that we're talking about, these statistics, we should link some research and sites too. So we'll provide everybody with the backup for what we're saying. But so you want to take some breaks, you want to have snacks because literally the emotional part sets in when you're hungry. So don't forget to have breakfast, which I don't do very well at all.
Okay, I'm a huge breakfast person.
I can't eat that early in the morning. But my team will tell you around 10 o'clock, Tina starts to get hungry. And then she's not happy.
And we're looking for snacks in our desk. Well, so that brings up something else. And this is something that is always perplexing to me. And I was guilty of it. And years ago, I would not carve out time for myself. It was, I'm so busy at work. I'm superwoman. If I leave the office, the place is going to fall apart.
Yeah.
It's like okay, intravenous me to the coffee pot, catheter me. I'm not leaving for the bathroom because I felt like I was really holding up the world. And what was really humbling is that, you can be gone for 10 minutes and no one's going to die on the table. This is, we're not saving lives. It's building materials. So you can take a moment, refocus, but why is it so hard to get people to do that?
That's a great question. I think people have not embraced the need for mindfulness in business. And sometimes when you say, I need a break, or I'm leaving this office for lunch today because I need to get outside, can be perceived as a sign of weakness. Like, why does that person feel like they need a break to continue? Like, everyone else is plowing through.
You're all in there grinding it out, and you're like little cogs. It's like, okay, that might have been cool 30 years ago, but in today's world, I would hope that we've evolved to the point where it's, hey, let's make sure we're having a good balance with this. I want to make good decisions for the company. So when I restructure my day or do some blocking, I'm going to approve credit apps, from this time. I'm going to try to release these orders. And I realize that orders come in throughout the day. And so I can almost hear a couple credit people out there going, easy for you to say, I have to be watching my email. Well, you can, but you can also set up some logic with it. You can set, everyone has an email box coming in where you can have orders going into one and you can pop into that. And you can do some things like you were saying to structure your day to make it not quite as overwhelming.
There are companies that are creating outdoor spaces for their people to work when they feel like they're, feeling boxed into their office, or they feel like they need to recharge their batteries, but still have to keep working.
Okay.
We don't have that at my company, but we have a pavilion outside. And every now and then, like if I'm just getting that feeling where I'm overwhelmed, but I have to keep working, I know I just can't go home. Sometimes I'll take my computer, or I'll just even take my phone out to the pavilion with a cup of coffee or a glass of water or something, and I'll just sit outside for 10 or 15 minutes, clean up a couple emails, just take a couple fresh breaths, and then I feel a lot better when I go back inside. So a couple years ago, I put a beach chair in the back of my car.
Okay.
And when it was nice out, I would throw my beach chair just in the grass at work in our little parking lot, and I would sit there for an hour. It was usually my lunch break, but I would still go through emails just to be outside because I felt like it helped me to recharge. So back to what you were saying about
Okay, before you go on, did anyone give you grief for that? Did you look like the?
No,
Because it's an unusual thing to see.
Yeah.
So immediately, most people tend to skew negative. Where what are you doing out there? And
Yeah.
it's like it's like, well, I'm going to make this commonplace. I'm going to start a trend.
Yeah. So we had a prior executive who worked at our company who had a beach chair in the back of his car, and that's what he did every day. But he took a straight up nap. I mean, he took a nap out there. But when he came back in, that was his lunch. It wasn't like he was napping in the middle of the day.
I think that's so cool.
He would lay out there in the sun and soak up the sun and, until it was too cold, because we're in New Jersey, to do that anymore. And yeah, some people were like, what is he doing out there in the parking lot? But it worked for him. He didn't care. I mean, a lot of people that are in leadership positions, managerial positions where they're making decisions, they have a tendency to not care what other people think about them. It is a personality trait that we look for in psychology for managerial positions.
Okay.
So I think if you're in that kind of position and you can go sit outside for a couple minutes, you don't really care what anybody thinks about what you're doing out there.
If you're in credit, you have to learn to have thick skin, and you have to learn
true.
not to care that if someone's upset with you, because at any given point in the day, somebody's mad at you for something.
Earlier, you talked about the need to feel like you're always tied to your desk, plowing through, working so hard. I can't take a break. I've got too much to do, almost like the martyr situation. Sometimes I think that's generational. And those are value sets that we've learned from either our generation or our parents. That's sometimes where we talk about the younger generations coming in, the millennials and after, that they're lazy, that's the typical stereotype.
Yeah.
I am always quick to correct everyone and say, I don't think they're lazy. I just think they have different value sets than what we do. They value their mental health. They value their work-life balance. They want to shut their phones off at 6:30. If they feel that they need to take a break in the middle of the day because they're experiencing fatigue or decision-making fatigue, they'll take a break. And that has been normalized for them. That's not normalized for you and me.
No.
Because our parents and the people that we've worked alongside of, they work twice as hard than, some of the younger generations. And that's why they're perceived as not wanting to work as hard. It's just a different set of values.
Well, I remember back in the day, worked for, Guardian Fiberglass, and the president of that, you came in, there was like no valor in staying home. You had to come in. If you were sick, it was a badge of honor. You were carrying your severed head in your arm because you're like, I'm at work though. And, not realizing that, this isn't awesome. You're making everybody else sick now. You're not productive at all. I love that someone is like, look, I'm not going to come in and infect everybody else. Or, I need to take a break. Watch my cue, or, hey, I'm going to pop out and take a walk around. I really love that subsequent generations have gotten so much better about blending that. So, but to kind of wrap us up, when we're looking at that credit community and those decisions, and they're all tied to money, because every credit decision, whether you're cutting off a customer because they didn't pay, not just for fun, whether it's trying to approve an account, whether it's having a discussion with a salesman, what are some, especially when they have no choice but to make those decisions towards the end of the day, what are some things that they can do to maybe take that beat?
Well, take the beat, meaning take a break.
Recognize. I think self-awareness was one of the things you pointed out. And for some people, that's easier than others. And to be able to look at that situation and realize I need a moment and be able to articulate that without sounding like you're having a new age thing. I need to go get my crystals, and we're going to do a prayer circle here with our sage smudge.
Right. Yes. So credit managers still have to make decisions at the end of the day. I mean, literally the end of the day, like 4 or 5 o'clock. They still have to make decisions. Even if they're fatigued, they still have to make decisions. So what kind of decision do you want to make? Do you want to make one where you're just, feeling like you have to get it done and you're, okay, just go ahead, ship it, do it, give them whatever credit they want? Or do you want to make a better decision. So if you want to try to make a better decision, something that I might recommend is making a checklist of your decision-making process. So what are the things that you go through in your head when you're making the good decisions at 9 o'clock in the morning?
Okay.
Make yourself a little checklist and just keep it. And then if you have to make that decision at 4 o'clock and you know you're feeling fatigued, look back at that checklist. I don't know what the decisions are for a credit manager, but, did I check their references? Did I consider, have they had an outstanding balance over 90 days? Did I consider this? How big's the order? How's this going to impact my salesperson? All the things. Just so that their fatigue doesn't cause them to miss some steps in thinking it through.
I love that.
And then they can feel like they made the decision, even though they're tired, because we all have to keep working when we're tired, but at least they feel like they had a little checklist to make sure they didn't miss any steps.
I love the checklist idea. So, just to kind of recap, because I know this, we could go on with this conversation forever. I am fascinated by the whole psychology behind it. So I kind of geeked out on the numbers and stuff.
Yeah.
And
they're great
because you are so educated on this topic that I didn't want to come like, okay, I have a thought. You're like, nice, it's lonely, let it out.
The way that I'm approaching this topic is from the perspective of industrial and organizational psychology. So not so much as a psychologist, a clinician, because that's not what I am. But, in industrial and organizational psychology, we look at why people do the things they do and how can we leverage that to build better workplaces. And recognizing that cognitive fatigue is a real thing and how it impacts businesses in different departments, specifically for you in this podcast, the credit department, and figuring out what are ways that we can understand what that fatigue is. What does it look like? What are the feelings that come with it? What times of day is it typical? And proven by your statistics, we're better performers in the morning. And then, you can make your better decisions in the morning. Make sure you're having snacks. Make sure you're taking breaks every now and then. And then in the afternoon, if you're feeling fatigued, have a little checklist that you can go through that can help you to feel like you're making the best decision you can, even though you're tired.
I love that. I love the tips and the resources. And I can't thank you enough for spending time with us this afternoon. I always love hanging out with you.
Me too.
And I just think everybody needs to have a you in their company.
Hey, that's what I say about you.
So I think this was so much fun. Tina, thank you so much for joining us. And that wraps another episode of LBM Talks Credit. Now, we come out every other Tuesday. You never want to miss an episode. We're always going to do something a little bit different, a little bit out of the box. We're talking about trade credit, specifically in the lumber and building material construction industry. We are on Apple, Spotify, and Amazon Music. Until next time, I'm Thea Dudley. Keep watching that AR.